Welcome. Today is Friday, day 6 of the first week in Advent, and we have the first candle lit. We're reading Tabitha's Travels by Arnold Treated, and today's chapter is titled Servant Girl. The name Decca of Megiddo hung in the air like the stench of burned meat. Tabitha watched her father's face, which was frozen in a look of death. He stared at the trader, so shocked that even his tongue wouldn't move. Finally, his chin began to wobble, and he formed a rasping whisper with his mouth. "The Decca," he said, and paused. "Decca of Megiddo? That cannot be. He is far to the north, near the Lake of Galilee." The other trader shook his head rapidly. No, he said. "He was here just these last few days. His entire caravan camped here for a week. Uriah saw him. Tell him, Uriah." He turned to another trader who nodded. "It is true," the second man said. "I saw him with my own eyes." Several other men murmured their agreement. Eliakim's knees went weak and he sank down to the pillows. "What have I done?" he moaned. "That poor boy Jotham, in the clutches of that thief!" Tabitha had never seen her father quite like this. She remembered how he always knew the answer to any question, how he gave orders without hesitation, solved problems with barely a thought. He was confident and sure. But what she saw before her now was a man in terrible guilt and terrible pain. Zadok and the other traders wished Eliakim well, then left the tent so as not to embarrass their friend. Tabitha stayed with her father, though, wondering how to help him. Eliakim just sat staring straight ahead. It's as if he had killed Jotham, Tabitha thought. And suddenly she realized. Tabitha's insides began to shake then at the thought that Jotham might be dead. "Do you really think this evil man would harm Jotham?" she asked. Eliakim turned and stared blankly at his daughter. Decca of Megiddo is the most treacherous of all villains. He would kill his own mother for a piece of stale bread." Tabitha had never heard her father speak such angry words in her whole life and couldn't figure out why he did now. But what she did know was that her father was in great pain, and that she could do something about. "I lift up my eyes to the hills," she started softly. "Where does my help come from?" They were words she had learned from the poems of the Torah, words she now used to comfort her father. "My help comes from the Lord," she continued, "the maker of heaven and earth." A man could have eaten a heavy meal in the time Eliakim sat listening to his daughter recite Psalm 121. But finally he closed his eyes and then opened them slowly and looked at his daughter. "Your words are a powerful cure," he said to Tabitha, and then he smiled, which made Tabitha relax. "I have been considering our course," he continued, "and Jehovah has revealed it to me clearly." Eliakim stood quickly and went to the entrance of the tent. He called the trader back in. "Zadok, my friend," he said, "would you trade 3 horses for 4 of my camels?" "You'll have 3 of my finest," Zadok replied. "Then I will send for them within the hour." Holding his hand out to Tabitha, he said, "Come, we must hurry. There's much to do." Tabitha felt herself pushed this way and that as her father tore through the crowd. She barely noticed the fire dancers, saw only one juggle from the jugglers, and never did find the source of the lute music she heard. Then they had reached the other side of the city, passed through the dung gate in the wall, and were back at their camp before Tabitha had blinked twice, it seemed. As they approached, Eliakim yelled, "Hoi-yi! Hoi-yi!" By the time they stood at the fire circle, the entire clan had assembled to hear the alarm. "My brothers," Eliakim said to Tabitha's uncles, "I have done a terrible thing. I have released the boy Jotham into the clutches of Decca of Megiddo." A loud cry swept across the family, some because they realized what was happening to Jotham, some because they realized the thief had ridden right through their camp without their knowing it. "We must go and rescue the boy at once," Eliakim continued. "Hasba, Uzziah, you and I will leave within the hour. Horses have been arranged. Go now and pack lightly. Ananias," he said to his younger brother, you must lead our flocks to the gates of Bethlehem. When we have found the boy, we will meet you there. In your travels, watch for Jotham's family and tell them he is alive." Eliakim thought about that for a moment and then added, "At least we hope he is." With a clap of his hands, Eliakim dismissed the group, then went to his tent where his wife and daughters were already gathering his things. As Eliakim hurried about, collecting knives and tools and bedding, Tabitha followed him, pulling at his tunic. "Father, Father," she said, "I have a thought." "Yes, Tabitha," Eliakim replied as he dug through the contents of a bag. "What is it?" "Your mission is much too important for you to worry about cooking food or building fires. You must spend all your time in your investigations. You must take a woman with you to care for the camp, to cook your food, to mend your clothing." Eliakim shook his head like a dog shaking off water. No, it will be much too dangerous." "But, Father," she insisted, "you need someone to care for your needs while you do the work of a man." Eliakim suddenly realized what his daughter was doing. He tried to hide a smile and teased her a bit as he packed. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps our task will be done more quickly if we have help. Go tell your brother Saul he is going with us." "Saul?" Tabitha cried. "He can't go. He must stay to watch his flock." Oh, yes, you are correct," Eliakim said. "But what can I do? It must be a son who accompanies me." "Why a son?" Tabitha said, more angrily than she would normally talk to her father. "A girl is every bit as good as a boy. We can do anything a boy can do, and more," she lectured. "Can a boy cook a fine stew? Can a boy sew a torn tent? Will a boy wash his father's feet after a long day?" Eliakim stopped his work to rub his chin and think. "Very well, then. I guess it will have to be a daughter." Tabitha grinned a wide grin as her father looked at her, but then Eliakim looked to the other side of the tent and said, "Rachel, pack your things. You're going with me." Rachel looked up in shock from where she was helping her mother. I am to go on a horse?" "Yes, now quickly pack." "But, Father," the girl cried, "I don't want to go off chasing thieves and sleeping in the dirt." "Father," Tabitha whispered, pulling at his tunic. "Father!" "Yes, Tabitha," Eliam answered. "Why would you choose a rose to do the work of a thorn?" Eliakim nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right," he whispered back, and then calling across the tent again, he said, "Rachel, you may stay with your mother. Tabitha shall accompany me." Tabitha grinned again, and her father smiled, showing that he knew all along it would come to this. "Quickly now," he said, "pack a few clothes. The sun will not wait for us." A short while later, the sheep and camels had been delivered, the horses had been fetched and loaded, and the rescuers were ready to leave. Prayers were said, and greetings of safe travel were given. "May you find the boy Jotham before his journey leads to peril." Ananias said that, and it surprised Tabitha. Then the three men mounted their horses, and Eliakim pulled Tabitha up in front of him. Then, with a kick of their heels, they had the animals moving, returning down the road their caravan had traveled just 2 days before. As the great city of Hebron disappeared behind them, Tabitha wondered what adventure lay ahead, and if they would find her friend Jotham before any harm came his way. John tells us that Jesus said, "I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you." These words of Jesus tell us one of the reasons he came to earth, to let us know that God wants to be friends with us. Abraham had been called a friend of God many centuries before this, but until Jesus made it clear, probably few people thought about God as a friend. So, what does it mean to be friends with the Son of God? What do friends do for each other? How do they treat each other? One answer would be that friends would do anything for each other, even give up their lives, which is, of course, exactly what Jesus did for us. How can we show him our friendship in return? How would he like to see us behave? Eliakim is not required to attempt the rescue of Jotham. He could just go about his business, and no one would ever know or care that he once knew the boy. But Eliakim is a friend of both Jotham and God, so he must act as Jesus would in the same situation. He must be willing to give up the life he has known to be like Jesus to someone else. How can you be like Jesus to others in your life?